Britain has begun quarantining people entering the country. Travellers will have to provide an address where they will self-isolate for 2 weeks. There are only a few exceptions, such as for essential workers. The measure aims to prevent a second wave of COVID-19 from abroad, but some say that they were not aware of the new rules.
Apparently people are not informed that you need to fulfill an online form before you come here. I've seen maybe 5 people who came. The rest they didn't do it, so that will delay the time that they'll pass it. And we're lucky that there are not many people traveling, but meanwhile, if there are more, this will be a problem.
Ollie Barrett joins us live from London for more on this. Ollie, airlines in the UK not in favour of these new measures.
They are absolutely furious, as is the wider tourism sector. They say that just as Europe is beginning to reopen, just as Europe is beginning to get its aviation and tourism sectors back up and running, the UK is closing its doors. Now, the British government says that this is a necessary measure to try and make sure that as the outbreak goes down in this country, that it can keep COVID-19 under control by limiting the number of cases that come into the country. Well, critics say that is a measure that should have been in place many weeks ago rather than being brought in now. Critics also wonder whether this is even vaguely enforceable, with many of the people coming back to the UK from wherever they've been, getting on public transport, going home. There aren't the number of officers that there might need to be to knock on doors and make sure that people are isolating where they've said they will do. So all sorts of reasons that this policy is being criticised. Michael O'Leary is the Ryanair boss, and he is not holding back, let's say, in his criticism of the government's policy.
I think as an industry, and particularly the British tourism industry, we're facing 2-3 years before we recover from this crisis. And ineffective measures like Priti Patel's useless quarantine just set that process back, and they damage not just British Airlines, but also thousands of British tourism operators and the millions of jobs that they sustain.
Ollie, the UK is also trying to create these travel corridors ahead of the summer holidays. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, this is in a sense a way that the government might be able to fudge some of this. One of the real concerns from the tourism sector is that if you say to people, when you come back to the UK from a foreign holiday, you're going to have to isolate for 2 weeks, so they simply won't go on their foreign summer holiday, which could be a huge problem for the tourism sector. So the government is already in discussions with a number of countries to try and come up with these so-called air bridges, with countries where the outbreak is also on the downward trend, which are considered to be relatively safe when it comes to COVID-19 and the number of infections that you might bring back into the UK, and say that you're exempt from the quarantine rules so that British tourists would be able to take those European, perhaps summer holidays, seeking some sunshine, and come back to the UK and not have to go into 2 weeks of isolation. So we may well see some of those deals rolled out in the coming weeks, particularly with regards to European countries. But that will be controversial too if there are countries around the world who can't reach a deal with the United Kingdom. That is going to make some of those countries potentially cross with the United Kingdom. So this is all fraught with difficulties.
Thanks for that update. Ollie Barrett speaking to us from London.